Welcome to Real Talk, where I give real answers to real questions from real worship leaders. If you are a real worship leader with a real question and you want a real answer, head right here and submit your question for a future episode. Got some good questions this week? Let's talk about it. I have my first truly tone-deaf tenor in 42 years of helping church choirs. He is a lovely person and is quite enthusiastic about singing on our 6-person praise team. I've tried to get him to match tones. He sometimes accidentally finds the tones, but does not stay on it during rehearsal. But in a 60 to 90 minute rehearsal, they have a short attention span. There's not enough time to focus on him. How do I help him to improve? I love his attitude and dedication. I'm terrified of hurting him or humiliating him. I've resorted to muting his mic after sound check as he sings so loudly that he doesn't need amplification, and we're working on dynamics. He doesn't seem to understand the difference between loud and soft either. Any suggestions? Well, first of all, I'll commend you in your desire to actually help him improve and not just be like, how do I kick him off the team instantly? Because, I think that sometimes, if we're being honest, we have that thought in our head, and sometimes it needs to happen. Sometimes somebody should not be serving on the worship team because they aren't musically gifted. And this is a tension that I think we hold, but I think the answer is clear. It's like, you can go one of two extremes. You're like, I don't care how well you play, I just care about your heart. Or, I only care about how well you play, and I don't care about your heart at all, and I don't even care if you're an unbeliever and you can be on the team. Obviously, the answer lies somewhere in the middle, and you have to decide where that exact point for you is. I would obviously lean more towards I care about your heart more than I care about how well you play, but we have to understand that at some point there is a musical threshold that we need to cross where we are actually able to lead our church in musical worship. And part of that threshold that we need to cross is that we can't be a distraction to people in our worship services. So you have to ask yourself, is this person being a distraction in the worship service because they have not met the musical threshold of musical excellency or quality? And maybe not even excellency is the word, because I don't think that we have to be the most excellent musicians in the world to lead worship, but there is a standard that we need to meet. And if we do not meet that standard, whether that's singing, whether that's playing guitar, whether that's drumming, whatever it is, then we should not be leading worship because we're not ready to lead it musically yet. And when I say leading worship, I'm speaking of musical worship. There's plenty of other ways to lead worship as well. So whether this person is a bad singer and they're just out of tune all the time and they sing really loudly and it dominates the vocal landscape of your church, which they shouldn't be singing that loud anyways, because the team up front, the band up front, is not the main instrument, is not the main focus or the main vocal of our corporate worship gathering. It is the people of our church. So maybe this person just doesn't understand that, and you just need to explain a theology of corporate worship to them, that we are trying to allow the people in our church to sing together, and it's not about us, and we really only need to sing loud enough to allow them, meaning our church, to follow along to the song so that they can all worship together. That's really our goal. Our goal isn't to be up there to sing the songs, really well and have people enjoy our music, I guess. I mean, we want to sing with excellency, but ultimately the congregation is the main voice of our corporate gathering. So maybe just explain that, not even just to him. That's something you can explain to your whole team, and maybe he'll get at least the volume part of the conversation. Maybe he'll get that from the theology. What if we could shape our team's musicianship by teaching them theology? I don't know, just a thought I had. That would be an interesting exercise. Now, what are some practical things that you can do for this guy instead of just kicking him off the team? First of all, the most practical thing that you can do is just acknowledge that you need to address this and that you are going to talk to him about it. And then here is how I would talk to him about it. I would say, hey, I've noticed recently that it seems to me like you are struggling to hit the harmonies or whatever you're struggling with. And I would love to work with you to just improve a little bit vocally. And in fact, I want to get together and even listen to some of the recordings that we have. A side note, if you have live streams, which you said you mute them in the mix, maybe don't mute them in the mix for some Sunday, or record your rehearsal or something, but use those recordings if you live stream at your church to play it back to people. And I think most of the time they're going to be like, I didn't know I sounded like that. I sound horrible. I need to fix that. And maybe their embarrassment will cause them to improve. Not that we're doing it to embarrass them, but we are our own worst critics. So hopefully when this guy hears himself singing, he's like, that does not sound as good as I thought it did. And then on his own, he makes the decision, okay, I need to improve. So that's what I always recommend. I recommend sitting down and listening with the team to a recording. And you don't even, I guess you don't need to do that just focused on him either. I think it's a healthy activity for all of your team to do. So grab a recording of your live stream and sit down and listen to a song with your team and say, hey, I want you to listen to your part and just see what you can do better. And you don't even need to specifically call him out in that, because your whole team will benefit from that exercise. And then maybe in that exercise, he'll hear that he's not singing that well and needs to improve. And then he can be the one to point it out, and then you can walk alongside him. Probably 75% of the time, maybe even more, I find that to be the case, at least with teams that I've worked at. People want to improve. People don't want to sound horrible. So if you give them the chance to hear that they sound horrible and they recognize that they sound horrible, then they'll want to improve on their own, and then you can be like, well, I've got some resources to help you out. Now, how do you help him out? Well, you can, if you have the time and the willingness and the energy, walk alongside him and meet with him outside of your normal gatherings. I don't think that your rehearsals are going to be the time where you work with one person to improve their musicianship. I don't think that that's fair to the rest of the team. The expectation is sort of that people just show up and that they would be pretty much ready to lead the song, and you're just figuring out how to play it and sing it together. And so it's not really the place at rehearsal to work on those things with one individual person, which means you need to either do it outside of rehearsal, but I don't think it's necessarily, it doesn't fall 100% on the worship team leader to make their musicians like these amazing musicians. If you're like part-time or something and you don't have time to do it, I'll put it that way. If you're full-time, then maybe there's more of a sense of that. But if you're just like a volunteer, I don't even know if you said you were a volunteer or not, but if you're just a volunteer, then people got to carry their own weight here. So point them in the right direction to some helpful resources. Look up some vocal tutorials on YouTube and then send them over to that person and say, these are the specific things that I'd like you to work on, and then get together with them outside of rehearsal a time or two and help them improve that way. Before I move on to question number 2, just a quick update on Real Talk. Every summer, I take a month off of Real Talk, so this is the last episode of Real Talk until August 6th. So I will be taking 4 weeks off, 5 weeks off, whatever it is. The month of July, I'll be off, and then we'll start things back up with Real Talk in August. So feel free to submit your questions in the meantime. I'll get to them in August. I am the director of music at our church, but like our other few front leaders, I am a volunteer. It is not a paid position. I need to share some reminders with the other front leaders, but I feel like they don't respect the role of leadership that the elders placed me in. What should I do? Well, first of all, realize that if you are in charge, if you are the director of music, you don't have to be paid for that role to feel like you have authority. Even if you were paid for that role, if tomorrow the elders came to you and said, hey, we'd like to start paying you to do this, your team's not going to suddenly have more respect for your authority, for your leadership. You probably have worked with these people for a while, and then all of a sudden you were put in charge of it, and now you feel like, oh, these are all my friends, but they only see me as their friend, they don't see me as their leader. And so I would just step into it more confidently. I feel like maybe some of these things are an internal monologue that you're having. I need to share some reminders with the other leaders, but I feel like they don't respect the role of leadership that I have. I mean, have you seen that? Has that actually taken place? Or are you just telling yourself that because you've never actually tried to take a leadership position in your team? And you've just always told yourself, well, maybe I don't feel like I should be the director of worship. Just something to think about. Maybe it's more of an internal thing. But if you never take the steps to actually lead your team, then you will never be in a position of leadership. You will always just be trying to pull the strings from the background without asserting yourself as I am the director of this team, and so here's the vision that I have for the team, and this is what we're going to move towards. I'm not saying like that you should articulate it in that way where you're like, I'm in charge now, everybody listen to me. We don't want to do that either, but we lead by communicating to our team, hey, I have a vision for some things that we want to do, and here's my plan to get there, so I'd really like to try and just start with one thing, maybe this one thing. I'm not sure, you didn't say what you needed to communicate to your team. It could be one of a million things, but let's think of some examples. Let's say you want to put your songs in a more singable key for the congregation. I use that example because it always stirs up controversy in the comments. But let's say you want to move towards that idea. We're going to pick songs that are more friendly for our congregation key-wise. I would go to the leaders of my team and say, hey, I would really love to focus on allowing our church the chance to sing a little bit more. And I think one of the things that we could try is to put the songs that we're singing in keys that fall between the range of a C to a C, or maybe we stretch it out to B flat to a high D, whatever range you want to use, somewhere in there. And just see how that goes if we start putting our songs in keys where it falls within that range, because I think that that range is a more singable range for the congregation. And do you see how I explained myself there? And it wasn't like, this is the key that we're going to do this song in from now on because I said so. I know you're leading it, but this is what we're going to do. There's a huge difference between those two things, but you're still the leader if you explain the vision that you have. What was the vision that I have? I want to help our church sing better sing more, be able to participate more during corporate worship. The way that we're going to try to do that is to put our songs in a more congregational friendly key. Here is the criteria for how we're going to do it. We're going to put it between these ranges. Let's try it this Sunday and see how it goes. So start thinking of the decisions that you need to make in that pattern. I need to know why I'm doing it. I need to know how we're going to do it, and then how we're going to implement it. And I think if you communicate it that way, the other leaders in your team, I assume you just mean people who lead worship on Sunday, I think they'll be more apt to follow the direction that you have for the team. Now, maybe one of the things that you want to add to your worship team is that you don't rehearse during the week, but you need a plan for your rehearsal. Well, I've got you covered. I'll link down in the description below my worship rehearsal blueprint. In that blueprint, I'll give you the 5 parts to the perfect worship rehearsal that leads your team well, musically, obviously, because we need to get ready for Sunday musically, but also spiritually so that they grow closer to God, and relationally so that they grow closer to each other. So if you need a plan for your worship rehearsals, check it out down in the description below. It's everything you need to run the perfect worship rehearsal. Other than that, thanks so much for joining me. Till I see you in the next video, keep leading worship well.